Okay, so the trick to getting everything into these 2 bags is good compression. So I was able to get the full Kammock mountain blanket quilt into here, and the entire Sunda goes in here. I do keep the poles separate, the camping cook gear, my straps, and the pungo, and that's the tarp. And like I said, I had enough room if I wanted to put probably about this much more space. Okay, so last night I gave myself 15 minutes before sunset to set up the tent and the hammock. And I will say the actual creating the tent without the guidelines takes about 4 to 5 minutes. And it literally takes a minute to 2 minutes to get everything adjusted so that you can get this up where you want to and set it up. Where it becomes sort of an interesting challenge is when you start putting in the guidelines, because once you've packed them away, they're never going to unpack as easy, and so they end up getting twisted, and it's just, I get to figure out how to wrap these up so I can unwrap them quickly. But that being said, I slept in the hammock last night, and it was very, very comfortable. I was using an X-Ped pad, and I switched out to the Kammock Pungo pad, and I put the Pungo pad in here, and it actually was pretty good. It did slide a little bit. That was down a little bit further up, but for the most part, it gave me about the same comfort as the X-Ped, which was good. So I don't think you actually need to have this one. What I did like about it is that it's wider at the top instead of being square like my X-Ped is. And when you're putting these in, you need to make sure that you kind of find that this is even on both sides. I was at the house, so I used a regular pillow. There are things that you can use to hang stuff up on, but honestly, there's enough give on these that you can kind of put your glasses and your phone here on the sides and you're fine. And the first night, I did feel because it was down to 50, I did feel the cold spots on the edges. This mountain blanket was super warm, and you didn't really need to make the box at the end. And I was all very comfortable except for right here where the shoulders are touching, which when I was sleeping, it wasn't that bad. And if you were wearing, say, like a fleece sleeping sweater or something, you'd be perfectly fine. But these are some things that I noted. Normally, you put the guidelines here. I find that the guideline here is actually pretty good. It keeps a lot of stability from back and forth. But the first time I set this up, I had this very, very taut, and the hammock didn't move hardly at all. This time I put a lot more slack in it. It hung a lot more like a hammock. It swayed a little more. It was comfortable. So you can make some adjustability to your comfort. But what I didn't like was when you used the guidelines, 3 individual guidelines, you just kept having tripping hazards all night long when it was dark. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up just borrowing the one peg and then having the one over there, because this is at an angle. And that seems to make it a little bit easier. And it also allows you to pull back one flap and keep one flap closed. If there are critiques I have on this tent, and by the way, all the smuts is coming from the sap from the trees, something to think about. If I have one big gripe, it is the guidelines. There needs to be some way to see the guidelines at night. And if for some reason you hit these guidelines because of the tension being a hammock, if that tent peg comes out, you launch it like a slingshot and you'll lose a tent peg. So I've purchased some extras. The other thing is I invested in these buckles, and these buckles make it so much easier to cinch, these cinch buckles. So now when you hook the clip up, you're not hooking to this strap trying to find which one of these things you want to go to. You literally just hook in here and just pull back. And I can take this down and pick it up 1,000 times and just readjust this. Like right now, this is kind of gone wonky. I'll clean that up. It'll just take a second to take that off, set it up where I want it, put it and clip it right back on. It is super, super easy. There was one more critique I have of this, and see if I can see it. You see me moving here, being cautious, because these zippers, being as fine as they are, what ends up happening is a lot of times they get caught in the material. I am thinking about trying to figure out how to use the field blanket as an underquilt, because I'm used to ultralight camping and I want as small package as possible. Everything is fitting into these two 15-liter bags. So coming back in here again, the space is pretty good. You can sit in here. When you have it very taut, it is really stable. But when you have it much more hammocky, rolling over in the middle of the night is a little more unstable. And I did on one occasion, because this wasn't perfectly in the middle, I did roll out and I was having a hard time getting up and in. The airflow at night is decent, but right now during the day it's 75 and it is quite warm in here. Even with the one flaps up, it is a little toasty. So I would want to have both of these rolled back, and get, it's on like a regular hammock where you're exposed. You're always going to have something over you. But if you're just using this for camping and sleeping, it is perfect. Those tiny little things, the cinch straps, maybe some more visible guidelines, and this is about a perfect tent.